Damaged Defenders by Scheherazade. Chapter 20. Bruce, Thor, and Tony. Bruce couldn't remember the last time he'd been this happy and content. He and Betty had cuddled and talked for hours. He told her about the places he'd been and the good he'd done. She told him about working at Cheyenne Mountain. And despite the fact that in both cases they'd both been where they were for not so good reasons, they had deliberately not mentioned that part of it. Eventually, hunger drove them off the couch to the well-appointed kitchen. Bruce had to stare because the cabinets were stocked with teas, spices, and foodstuffs from the areas he'd been in most recently, as well as more standard American fare.
You know, Tony is a little scary sometimes,
Bruce said after a few moments.
In a good way, but scary.
Betty smiled at him. "How about some curry?" she asked.
Sounds good.
They moved around the kitchen with surprising ease, given they hadn't been around each other in a year. Bruce supposed that there were just some things you didn't forget. "So, are you going to be helping with the cleanup?" Betty asked, as they were setting the table. Bruce shrugged.
Not directly, I don't think. I can do more good in the labs, or helping keep things moving here in the tower.
Working here would also keep him safer. He didn't trust Ross as far as he could throw him, when not the other guy. "So, do you think he can be worked with?" Betty asked, a faint smile on her lips. Bruce didn't mistake who she was talking about. Still, he shrugged.
I'm not really sure. He recognizes you, and now Tony, and I don't think he'd ever attack either of you, and I could sort of aim him at appropriate targets, but beyond that,
he shrugged again.
I don't know. I just know I'm not going to start experimenting with it somewhere people can get hurt.
He snorted.
Doubtlessly, Tony has something worked out if I ever get the nerve up to try it.
Betty laughed. "He probably does," she agreed. After they'd eaten, the two of them headed for the labs. Finally, Bruce could only stare helplessly for several long moments.
Definitely Candyland,
he said after a long moment. The lab, like Bruce's floor, had been built with the presence of the Hulk in mind as much as possible. Most of the bigger machinery was tucked into alcoves and recesses. The rest of it was against the walls or on counters that were against the walls, which reduced the chances of distraction. And every last bit of it was brand new, top-of-the-line equipment that Bruce had drooled over before the accident. Things that were largely beyond the budget of most scientists unless they had a seriously wealthy backer who wasn't the government or the military. Because the government and the military had a tendency towards providing only the minimum of equipment and never top-of-the-line unless you were researching something they were very interested in. He grinned at Betty, who grinned back, and they soon lost themselves in putting the various equipment through its paces. Thor had, along with the other Avengers, save Bruce and Tony, headed back out into the city to render assistance where he could. Mjolnir being of but limited use to such endeavors, he had left it behind, safely tucked in his rooms. Today, after the events in Asgard, Thor chose to work in Loki's general vicinity, the better to watch him. Not for any nefarious purpose, but out of concern for Loki's state of mind. His brother had suffered much in the last year, and Thor would not see him slip into madness or despair if it could be avoided. In the watching, Thor made two discoveries. One, that his brother's magics were far more complex than he had known or suspected. He had never seen Loki use his magics to levitate anything, for instance, yet he saw Loki do so multiple times over the course of the day, among other works. The second thing Loki discovered made his blood burn. Loki seemed to take an inordinate pleasure in the awe and praise heaped upon him by the Midgardians with whom he worked. When Thor tried to remember the last time he'd seen such an honestly pleased look on Loki's face, he was horrified to realize that he had not seen such since they were practically infants. It hurt to think on just how much Loki must needs have suffered under the lash of the Allfather's disapproval. For that disapproval had doubtless given all with whom Loki interacted leave to treat him ill. After all, the Allfather knew what he was about, did he not, as king of Asgard? Unfortunately, Thor was much adrift in these waters. His gifts lay not in the healing of hearts and minds, but in battle. A stout blow with his fist or Mjolnir would solve nothing here. But then Thor thought of Eric and Darcy and Jane. They had rendered him assistance on his first sojourn in this world. Mayhap they could assist him with this. It was worth seeking their advice in any case. That evening, he sought the three of them out. He found them in one of the labs with the assistance of Jarvis. He did not understand Jarvis. It was neither man nor beast nor quite machine. Fortunately, Eric and Jane looked to be stopping for the day under Darcy's watchful eye. Jane smiled happily at him when she spotted him, and Thor wrapped her in a hug, then kissed her cheek. Her forwardness, just before he had left Midgard that first time, had startled him. Maidens in Asgard would never think to do such a thing. Asgardian maids were demure and chaste, desiring to be wooed and won. Even Lady Sif, who had challenged many notions of proper Asgardian female behavior, had been so a few times matters of the heart had come up. Thankfully, Thor had always been a bit more tolerant of unusual behavior, thanks to the Lady Sif, who would have beaten him badly did he have the temerity to correct her and demand proper behavior on her part. That said, Thor rather liked the more open and honest way Midgardians of both sexes showed their affections. There was something to be said for being able to openly show that someone held your favor.
Jane, your pursuits have gone well?
He asked. He had no idea what exactly she'd been working on this day, and even if he had, his knowledge of Midgardian science was all but non-existent, so a general question such as that was the best he could manage. Jane grinned at him. "We mostly had fun today," she admitted. "We've never gotten a chance to use some of the equipment in here, so we mostly came up with excuses to do just that." Thor smiled at her.
I am pleased your day was so pleasant, he said, though I must admit to seeking you out with purpose.
His face must have given something of his thoughts away because Jane sobered. "What's wrong?"
I would ask your advice,
Thor said.
in regards to my brother. I have done him ill and things between us are
Thor sighed.
rightfully strained, but I know not how to fix things between us, or help him. He has been dealt terrible blows of late, and unless I much miss my guess, his heart and mind will be calling an account of them ere long.
It was Darcy that spoke up. "Dude, you want to help your brother? The best thing you can do for him is just shut up and listen. Let him do the talking. Don't push him to talk about what happened. He will when he's ready. Don't try to justify things that happened that bugged him. Don't defend what other people said or did." Darcy pointed at him. "And if you really want to help heal the strain between you, show a little interest in his skills. Give him credit for the times he saved your ass one way or another, which I'm sure there has to be at least one case of that."
Thor looked abashed. Many more than one,
he admitted. Darcy nodded. "Tell him that. Even if it's way after the fact, he'll appreciate it." "I know you said you told him you don't care about the fact that he's Jotun, but reiterating that wouldn't hurt either," Jan said. "I don't know if he's hiding what he really looks like or not."
There must be some sort of spell at work, aye. Though that I will not ask of him. Jotuns can freeze even easier limbs with but a touch of their skin. I would not ask him to walk in his Jotun skin when he must needs fear harming all around him,
Thor said. "Okay, that's a good point," Jane said. "So scratch that idea. But Darcy is right about the rest. Let him talk about things in his own time and make sure you give him credit where it's due. And keep letting him know that you don't Gary's Jotun. He's probably going to need to hear that a lot for a while." Thor kissed Jane's forehead.
I thank you much for your counsel, ladies, he told them. Now mayhap we should go and find sustenance, if you have been here all day.
Darcy laughed. "I'm not sure they got lunch, but yeah, dinner would be good. Come on, big guy, let's go get something to eat." They all headed for the elevator. Once within, Thor turned to Eric. Eric anticipated what Thor intended to say. "I am in agreement with Barton," he said. "I am not overly happy with your brother right now, but I realize he wasn't doing things of his own free will. Still, I don't trust my judgment where he is concerned at the moment." Thor nodded acceptance of that. Loki had been aware of the weight of Thor's gaze all day. He could even guess as to the reason why Thor watched him so. Loki still couldn't quite decide whether to be warmed by Thor's concern or thoroughly annoyed. After a day of labor, Loki hungered for more intellectual pursuits. To that end, he decided to seek out Stark and see if the man would be amenable to a discussion, if nothing else. Stark certainly came the closest to having intelligence enough to keep up with him, and probably even surpassed Loki in certain areas.
Jarvis, he said when Thor had departed the elevator, I would speak with your master if he is available. There was a momentary pause, probably Jarvis consulting with Stark, before the computer being responded. Of course, Mr. Ferguson. Sir is in his main lab at the moment. And the elevator descended. Once the doors opened again, Jarvis spoke a second time. The door at the end of the corridor, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you, Jarvis, Loki said and headed for the indicated door. He walked in and paused for a moment in stunned surprise. Stark was not alone in the room. Rogers was here as well, and the two men seemed to be in the depths of a spirited debate of some sort, both of them fussing with some sort of constructs in the air that looked to be made of light and gave the form of Stark's suit. I still say the slight flat place here and the ridges on the boot top will be enough, Tony, Rogers said, indicating the light construct in two places. He scowled when his touch made the construct rotate. Stark was clearly used to that happening because he reached to stop the spin almost automatically. Enough for an emergency lift for you and Loki, maybe. You both have the grip strength to hang on. Everyone else, not so much. We need something a bit more involved to allow them to hang on comfortably. And speaking of, elaborate new games. Loki headed over, eyes on the construct. What is this? Then he glanced around. And how is it done? Stark grinned at him. This is a holographic display, he said, and a design program so I can make alterations to my suits and build new ones easily. As for how it's done, that's a bit more complicated. There are light emitters, he pointed up at the ceiling, all over up there, so that the holograms can be moved anywhere in the room. The design program has the dimensions of everything and tells the light emitters what they need to be showing. Loki was intrigued. And the purpose of your debate? Trying to figure out a way to make it easy for the non-flyers on the team to hitch a ride on the suit, but not make it easy for bad guys to get a hold of me, Stark said. Some subtle changes to the suit that the team would know is there, but is not immediately visible to a stranger, Loki said. Stark grinned. I like you! Yeah, that's the gist. And making sure the team stays on, because not everyone has the strength to hang on against the sorts of speeds I can and may have to go in this thing while carrying them, or the maneuvers that I might have to pull. Loki considered that for several moments. You have a number of things recessed in the suit, he said, indicated the hologram. Those of us who cannot fly under our own power all have belts of some sort and another that we wear on our armor. Stark immediately picked up where he was going with that thought. Have you guys put a special carabiner on your belts, reinforce the belt, and put a recessed latch somewhere around the waist of the suit? I like it! And it wouldn't be a huge problematic change to the suits, either. Stark grinned at him. Alright. Let's see. Okay, Jarvis, thicken the waist just a bit here, and yeah, that's perfect. Loki watched in fascination as the hologram shifted and changed, adding a small hidden panel and what was apparently a latch. The only other thing is to increase the power of the jets, but how much is going to have to wait for test runs with the existing jets? Stark looked between Rogers and himself. How much do you weigh, Loki? That stymied Loki somewhat. I am unsure how much I weigh in your measures, he admitted. Huh, that's easy enough to fix. Jarvis? Stark asked. Mr. Ferguson weighs 322 pounds and 5 ounces, Jarvis supplied. Stark's eyebrows went up. I would not have guessed that, he admitted. You look like you weigh maybe half that. I guess you've got denser bones and muscles than humans. Well, Rogers here only weighs 200 and a bit, so you get to be the one to stress test the jets if you're up for it later. I'd have to bring the Mark 7 down here first, which I can do in the morning. I find myself quite intrigued, Loki admitted, so I shall put myself at your disposal.